Hello, welcome to another Azure Centric Podcast on the Azure Weekly News. Thank you for listening. If you are new at the channel, thank you so much for listening and for being here. I want to ask you a favor. If you are new, just subscribe to the channel. Exactly. As Andrew is demonstrating. Don't forget to do that. It will help us a lot. Give a thumbs up if you like our podcast. Let's start it. How are you, my friend?
I'm very good tonight. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. Busy week. Not only on work,
for Azure, right?
but busy week as well on Azure. Yeah,
for sure. There was a lot of updates. It's becoming the usual, I guess.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I thought the cold weather here out west would slow them down.
Nope.
But I guess they were moving faster to stay warm.
Exactly. Yeah, it could be a good point of view. I never thought about that. But yeah, although Microsoft is in Redmond. By a reason, right?
I don't want to talk about warmer climates.
It's not because of warmer. It's because they are in Redmond, so they've been founded, if I'm not mistaken, in New Albuquerque, right, down in south. I think New Mexico, if I'm not mistaken. If my geography is right, and I apologize for that if it's not. But they basically born in New Albuquerque. I think it's New Mexico, if I'm not mistaken. And then they move up to Redmond, to the Seattle area, to Washington State, because of the weather. I don't know if you know that. It was one of the reasons because of the weather, because the weather it's not as good as in California as the other major techs. So now you can stay a little bit longer inside and focus on the development. So apparently happened that exactly the same over here. In Calgary, it's freezing cold. We have minus 20, something like that, with the wind chill goes to minus 30 centigrade.
So very cold right now.
Not Fahrenheit. I don't know the Fahrenheit, to be very honest.
We don't need to know that. That's too much information.
Too much information.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's darn cold.
It is.
But that's okay, because now we get to stay inside and enjoy all things Azure.
Absolutely. And my God, for me, it's been a really busy week. And apparently I'm not the only one.
No, you are not alone. No. There's lots going on, right? So the good news is I think a lot of companies' budgets have rolled over for the new year. And I'm actually seeing a lot of projects kind of coming through, all across North America, I want to say, both the US and Canada right now, that are more security oriented.
Absolutely.
People last year had the big push, get everything working, get everything running, get everybody working from home, stay safe, stay at home, all those good things. But now it's time to
secure the environment,
things up.
Take care of the environment,
make everything compliant.
Absolutely.
And really, think about those long-term steps that we need to have in place for really good success. So I know a lot of companies have had lots of change, and that's kind of a good thing, because Azure, very cloud-centric, Azure-centric. But
did you do that on purpose, or was like unintentional?
It actually just worked out. And I glanced over at you, and you had the Azure Centric logo underneath us, and I was like, oh boy, that just came out so bad. That's okay.
That's okay. Talking about security, and let's start our podcast. Azure Security Center. As we know, this was released on the 1st of February, but is the updates for the Azure Security Center on January. So a lot of good things that happen in this case regarding these January updates. Some of the vulnerability assessment on-premise and multi-cloud is being released to GA. Good, because it's always awesome the part that I like about Azure is they start within Azure, but now it's totally going to outside as well. So no matter what we have, if it's on-prem or even other multi-cloud machines, you can attach that to Azure Security Center. Really cool.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Azure Arc and everything really extends kind of the whole security premise and through not just hybrid but multi-cloud. There's so many options. I was actually talking with a client about a lot of the things in here with Security Center and how Microsoft has a very big commitment to that whole continuous improvement model with it. So not only are they adding new features all the time, they're also improving existing ones. And because the landscape in security changes as rapid as everywhere else now in cloud compute, they also drop calculations and security scores and things that don't make sense anymore. I think a good example of that is the password advice changed in the last few years, and they adapted that, right? So they adapt with all these new models that evolve. So really positive stuff. I don't know. Was there anything on here that you wanted to kind of jump into?
I want to just jump into two or three these bullet points, or in this case, these updates. One of them that makes totally sense now we're talking about is these multi-cloud connectors that is now becomes GA as well. And there is one part that I like about this is on Azure policy assessments, when you are doing not applicable, it was reporting as non-compliant, and now it's compliant because again, all of these Azure Security Center, they have these scorecards specially, right? And the policies that we are applying, sometimes they are guidelines, and sometimes it's not applicable, right? For the Azure policies, in this case, are not applicable for whatever we want. And sometimes it's a little bit annoying to have, in my personal opinion, of course, to have reporting as non-compliant. And now they kind of listen and they did that, right? So it's pretty cool. But that is, I don't know, would you want to cover any other aspect of this updates?
There was one that I like. One of the things, as you know, that I do, I have a very deep love of PowerPoint. Okay, so that might not be true, but it is a very useful tool we have to use all the time when we try to present data back to clients in a productive way that we can generate action, right? So the download of the CSV report was actually really cool because I can't tell you how long I've been having to highlight, copy and paste one line at a time out of that terrible web interface that looks great as a web interface, but not so good in a spreadsheet or on a PowerPoint slide. So I'm actually really happy about that because now we can actually just get plain text out of there.
Good.
And that's a big
good
win.
Point.
But like you, I like the not applicable resources now reported as compliant. That's also a really good win, I think, as far as actually looking at your reporting data in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And moving on, not moving on, but continuing on the Azure Security Center, they announced some public previews for the same January timeframe, from the same updates, and those were ones that the first one it did to my heart. It's the secure scores for management groups. Is one of the things that I was missing. Is one of the things that I did create a specific concept on Azure Centric, and now is the shameless plug of go up or whatever it is on the corner, whatever it is, to just go to that, to just see what management groups can do for you. And now the secure cards, the secure score is adding management groups in preview. It's still in preview, but it's a good way to do it. And it's not only the secure cards, it's the exceptions that you are adding, and that's a good thing. You are adding the management groups on a secure score. You are adding the exceptions as well. And now you have the users can request the tenant-wide visibility for their global administrator. And this is awesome because now with this preview, you are able to see on one security center, right, the entire landscape, the entire tenant. And that is massive. It goes back.
Yeah, it scales, right, for large environments.
It's not I don't see the problem of scale because security center always scale. I see the thing. What I was and I was on a workshop this week talking about that, for example, the Azure foundations, and one of the things that I noticed is when we talk about the architecture of the hub and spoke. So we have the central, what's called the core services, kind of subscription model that we already almost beat to that. We add one, for example, one podcast about subscriptions. I add another concept about subscriptions as well, to reinforce the importance of that. Again, when we talk about this, we talk about a place where, for example, the network team, the security team, and the IT infrastructure team can only have access and can be the main subscription, the core service, the share subscription, the tier 0, whatever you want to call it, hub and spoke. Okay, in this case, the hub, right? And by doing that, you can now, with this preview, have one security center managing the rest of the others subscriptions, like production, development, test, whatever it is that you have aside, and this control or exercising by this central one. And I think that is really key for me in this case.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I like coming out of that update was the security benchmark, right? So as we were talking on the previous one, Security Center has all of these updates coming out on a regular basis, and this month 35.
Yeah.
So
in preview,
one of the ones, I should say, it comes to preview first, right? So the one that actually gets me kind of excited about this is encryption at rest. One of the big things that, as you know, going through all these security workshops that we've been participating with lately with our clients, that encryption is something that's really important. It's a compliance driver for many operations. So just different things like that as they come in, right? Like different best practices. They've got all these things like unauthorized network access, and they have like 15 or 20 different items for network access listed in within that update. So really good updates that are actually meaningful and going to really help clients improve their security posture, right? And does it almost automatically, I want to say. Tells us about it automatically is probably the way I want to say that. Doesn't do it for us. It can, to a certain degree, it can tell us, and then we are the automation.
Absolutely. Moving on to the next update is now the support for more workloads, tag-based policies now in Backup Center public preview. So a lot of previews this week we will cover. This one is really cool because Backup Center on public preview now includes 3 additional workloads. SQL in Azure, VM, SAP HANA. It's huge for me. This is I was wondering when they are coming with this, because this was helping so much a few months ago or a few years ago when I was deploying SAP HANA or doing a massive project on that. But that's okay. And Azure Files. It's better later than never, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I was actually surprised that it wasn't already part of Azure Files, because it's such a well-established technology. It's been around for quite a bit, and it feels like a very mature product, Azure Files. But that said, now we've got tag-based policies in public preview for it. So maybe, once it makes it through this process, a few months, whatever that cycle ends up being, then the general availability release is going to be really exciting. So I think it's really nice because, they're really driving very strongly towards good governance, right? So
Absolutely.
A lot of policy-driven kind of items. Very practical because that is kind of a very high level of automation, right? So we can policy things. We don't have to keep going back and manually touching them, right? It's part of a policy.
It's not only that. It's about the tag. It's about you basically don't need to be. You can create your model of tagging the resources. I always when I talk to everyone about the foundations and everything else and governance, tagging is just such an important one because it makes your life easier. And here is one update that will rely on that to make your life easier.
I want to say tagging can make your life easier if you first define your policies governing tags. So a lot of times what happens in environments that we go into is, let's say you have a tag for backup. Some of it's with a capital B, some of it's with all lowercase, maybe one is all caps, maybe somebody puts a space in between back and up. So you have what people felt was the same thing, but to the systems driving it, that's not the same at all. It's different. Now we have all these disconnects, and then you have all these other. It goes down the chain and can lead to problems. It's hard to troubleshoot for darn sure. So yes, policies, we all love them, but map it out if you can. And there's different ways. Let us know if you need help cleaning up your tags. That's for sure. That's something both Marcos and I have done many times.
Yes.
I think we both have probably similar scripts by now that go in and pull them all and unify
absolutely
them. Oh
absolutely.
My gosh, yeah. So setting the policy, I just want to emphasize, that's really important. I think my preachy bit is done now. That's good.
That's okay. Let's move to another one. This is a nice one. I like about this. Microsoft Azure Attestation is now GA. So I was reading about this. And this is another set of security that we are adding into the environment, right? So
I want to ask a question here because I think a lot of people are going to be wondering the same thing. So you say this is a really good update. We're talking about security. What is Azure Attestation? What does that mean? Because I know later at the end of our podcast today, we're going to talk something related. So it would be good to have a foundation knowledge on this, I think.
We've been talking this for not specific Azure Attestation, but we've been talking about some of those components, right? We've been talking about, we talked, I think, last week about VBS, like the virtualization-based security enclaves. I think it was last week that we talked about that.
I think so.
But we talk about a lot of, for example, a lot of the improvements that Azure was doing with the Intel Software Guard extension, the SGX, for example. This service, what it does is basically it creates the platform to just make your integrity of everything that you're running, the binaries that you are running, right, as a trustworthy. So if you are using the trust execution environments, for example, such as the Intel SGX and the VBS enclaves, like the virtual based security, now you can put your, for example, TPMs, ships, right? The TPM attestation based on the Azure service to routinely establish the trust between your devices. So basically saying that it's more like the reason that you should use this is the way that you can attestate that your environment is running secure, that you are not compromised, that you protect the data while in use with implementations, all of that, and basically allows you to just create policies to restrict the token generation if you want, because you are saying that those environments or those servers or exactly those servers are not being mitigated, or not mitigated, not the right word. It's not being it's been in with the same integrity that you have since the beginning, right?
So this is about the hardware layer of the execution environment, right?
Yes. So, for example, there is a lot of attacks that we're seeing regarding the TPM module, right? The TPM module is on devices, for example, on the Surface Hub, or on the Surface, a laptop, for example, on any Windows, you have the TPM, right? On the server side, you have the TPM chip. So that chip is where you are having all the encryption. So it's, for example, where the encryption keys reside, and where you have like the physical encryption key that you are encrypting the Windows and encrypting everything that you want, it generates through that TPM chip. With the version 1.2, now with, for example, the device guard and the device guard, and then missing the other one is the device and user guards, something like that. I'm missing. It's a very big long weekend for me. Allows you to just kind of virtualize that chip, so you can have silos and you have less attacks, right? So by enable this, but you are always, depending on where you have the virtual machine and where they reside and all of that you need to do it, you need to basically give that, you need the TPM attestation, right? It's really critical when you try to avoid the root of trust on the security coprocessor to provide the cryptography validation, in this case, for your device. And that's where BitLocker, it's getting their keys to encrypt your OS and encrypt everything, right? So it's really important to make sure that goes. And goes back, if I'm allowed to just go back a little podcasts about when you talk about security, it goes back to the updates that we are talking about the confidential computing that we talk for a few podcasts already, and the improvement. So now we have a service that validates all of that, and this is the service, the Azure Attestation. Of course, it is high availability. It's really keen for companies that they really want to do that, and I think I went too deep on this, but that's okay.
Well, it was a detailed, but it was actually a very good explanation, and I think it's important because we want everyone to understand kind of the base layer of the security offerings and what drives from foundational levels up. So Microsoft's really putting in a lot of effort to secure not just hardware, but the binaries running on them, and then your software layers on top, right? So all of those loads. Yeah. And
integrate that with on-prem, because it's not the first week that we're talking about this. It's not the first update that we talk about some of the things, like, for example, the customer keys that now more and more services on Azure allows you to have that, because a lot of those companies right now, they invest a lot of those AHM and they don't see the value of, for example, Azure Key Vault. And they see the value, but they want to be able to integrate. They want to be able to use what it is that investment, right? And to control that, because sometimes they require, by compliance, by anything that they need to do it, to have that possession or that control, and not on the cloud in this case, right? And a lot of those services that you have on the cloud, they were only using, in this case, the encryption that was what's called the platform keys encryption. That is the Azure ones. Now you can have your customer, what's called the customer keys encryptions, that you allow you to use your own keys. And one of them could be from these type of services, right? You never know. It's another possibility that you adding, not only on Azure, but now you have a service on Azure that attestates that according to this. And this is really important, for example, when you have services that or servers that they are on the remote offices, that you want to make sure that they are secure, especially if you have Active Directory on those, right? Or services like core like that, to make sure that there is no violation in this case on the core principles of those ships, that you are not in this case decreasing the security because it's on a remote office or something like that. Now you have a service that they can monitoring that station, and bang, now everything becomes more stable, more secure, and more compliant with the general policies.
Yeah, so that's kind of a key word there, right? So it's about compliance, and it's about driving security within compliance.
Absolutely.
So I think you know your example of the remote office is actually really, really good, because we want to make sure that systems that are harder to have our eyes on are staying compliant, and by enabling a service like attestation, we can then drive alerting, monitoring, all these things, right? And now we can find out when there's something we should investigate.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, really cool. Yeah, so that's a really good foundation. And I think that's going to really lead into a lot of our topics, not just for the rest of today's podcast, for example, but it's definitely going to be applicable for future ones as we continue to evolve, right?
Absolutely. And this podcast specifically, I don't know why, it's talk about a lot of security.
It is, and that's why I kind of thought, you know what, let's listen to the master, and let's hear about the foundation of what attestation is, because there was so much security updates in this week. I thought it would be good because hopefully maybe somebody will come in to the podcast and hear the talk about that, and then have a better understanding now, right? So as you know, my little mantra is always, if we can help answer a question for one person, then hey, we
did our job.
Exactly.
Let's move to the next one. Getting a little bit away from the security, we will come back on that. But talking about IOPS, it's always important. Security and performance, they are hand to hand together, or they should in this case. Additional IOPS feature for MySQL on the flexible server, it's in public preview. I have to be honest, this is one of the things that I did not test it. I'm not using in nowadays too much of MySQL, but it's always good to see the infrastructure improvement. That's why we bring these two over here. Absolutely. Right?
Yeah. So, and my thinking is, I don't use a lot of MySQL anymore, but certainly, definitely SQL SAS and even SQL running in Azure VMs, pretty big on my list these days. But when we see a feature like additional IOPS that we can kind of just grab more throughput for the data, that tells me that this is something that's definitely on the radar, maybe for other databases as well, Cosmos and all those things, right? So I think this one's really cool on its own, but I'm also thinking about other things that's going to apply to, because as you know, with infrastructure as code, once all of the very smart people on the back end of these products figure out how to prove the concept in the preview mode of adding IOPS, I feel like it's going to start to filter into other things behind the scenes as well. So.
Absolutely. Moving to the next one. Support for Azure API Management certificates in Azure Key Vault as rich general availability. So we did a break on security, but we are come back again.
Yeah, so certificates are like super important.
Absolutely.
Right? Anybody that's done kind of intermediate to senior administration of any larger corporate networks probably has done a bunch of certificate work. And it can be tricky, right?
I think anyone
storage,
that have more than 3 hours on IT did certificates.
I think so too. There's so many things. I think even I don't remember if it was this week or last week. I did use my phone a friend feature on your cell phone for some different issues. It turned out it wasn't certificates, which was really great for me, but not so great for the customer because they did have to work through some configuration. But it goes to show you, and the reason I tell the funny story, funny to me at least, so I hope somebody finds it funny.
It's almost like a private joke.
I know. Well, just we don't really edit much around here, but feel free to cut a chunk of that one out. So, anyways, certificate management is very critical because it can become very complex. And one of the things I really like about Azure Key Vault is that it helps to simplify not just the use, but the management of all things security. And it seems to be coming up more and more these days in work and especially in updates here in our podcast as well, that I'm starting to see Azure Key Vault more and more as kind of a central product. Maybe it's just what I've been working on, but that seems to be a bit of an evolution for the product. So I was really happy to see this update, long story short, because a lot of the supported certificates are now going to be client certificates for authenticating back-end services, right, through APIs. And when we can integrate Key Vault, that means that the overhead for us doing administration is going to be lower. So I was liking that.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, everything that helps to manage the certificates, it will always be in our support. In this case, for Azure APIs, it's even better than ever. Moving to the next one, and this is a kind of we talk about this on the backup. But the support for SAP application, the NetWeaver, and operating system Linux telemetry on Azure Monitor for SAP solutions. So, wow, it's growing. It's in preview, but SAP they did a lot of announcements this week. I saw one that was not related to Azure, but it was related to the SAP as well. That now they integrate with Teams, and that was really cool. That SAP. So SAP Cloud is based on Azure, and makes sense that they are doing this because I'm sure that they want to basically monitoring their own cloud, but they have their own tools. But in this case, for all the customers that they are leveraging the Azure for their SAP application, especially NetWeaver and Linux, now they can add for their SAP solution. So it's really cool. Although, because this is in preview, it's on a few regions only. And I know that you are going to say that, right?
It's true. Yes. We have to emphasize, no matter how much we sing this song, every week I still hear the same story from different clients that, hey, well, it's in preview, so that means we can use it. And like, well, okay, well, hold on. Preview is no SLA from Microsoft, for example, right? But it also means that there are other risks. It might not work the way we think. It's not all the way through testing to general availability. Yeah. So there might be something unique in your use of it that doesn't work the way you thought it would.
Absolutely.
And guess what? Nobody's going to help you with it because it's in preview.
And it's not only that. I just want to reiterate one thing that you just sparked me on, that is, for example, on this particular topic, right? That is Azure Monitor. You think, oh, but it's only monitoring. So it's not dealing with production data. True. But, and there is always a but, right? Is because you are monitoring your SAP solution that probably is in production, what happens if you miss that monitoring? What happens if you are putting that, okay, and everything is working fine, and something on the back end change because it's in preview, okay, and stop working and you're not getting the alerts, and now you have a downtime on your application. Okay, just think about it. It's not because, it's not like a VM or something like that is in preview that might change, or code like we had over here. A lot of those updates. It's because it's literally because this is a preview feature. It's a public preview, so there are less chances of changes, chances of changes. In this case, because it's public preview regarding a private preview, yes, there are, but there are still a huge chance of changing this, adapting this, right? And even that, when this became GA, okay, guess what? Your preview will stop working, and you probably need to do it again. It's good to validate, and I want to reiterate that. I think it's going on that part that you're going right now. It's good to validate what you have, document it well, prepare well, so when this becomes GA, and yes, you got covered, we will cover over here on the podcast. When this becomes GA, now you are ready to deploy the full solution, and that's the reason that you should use it. Sorry, but I just want to reiterate that part. To just make a point.
No, it's a good thing, right? So it's a very valid point, and if you want to enable this in private preview or whatever you want to do, there is a link at the bottom of that little update.
Yeah.
Not so little, really. It's a big news, but it is a small update in text size. Just use that link. And they'll, the person responsible for that will talk with you and maybe enable it depending on what workloads you have within your tenant.
Absolutely.
So, different things. And you have to be very careful with preview because it can have consequences, like you're saying, right? Like we may not always realize, you think of monitoring, you think of a VM as kind of, maybe a lower priority item, lower risk, I should say. But at the end of the day, you use your monitoring to tell you about high priority problems. So it's all about thinking and planning it out, and kind of write it down, map it out, whiteboard it, make sure that it makes sense. And when you need help to plan things, engage professionals, use people that know the monitoring system and understand it. There's anyways, before I go down a big rabbit hole here and we go sideways, I know we have a lot of articles to cover today. Yeah, I get excited about monitoring. So yeah, I'm sorry for that. But so you do have one more, and I think the next one, it's about our good friend MySQL again, right? So general availability for start-stop functionality for Azure Database for MySQL.
Yeah, and that's awesome because again, this is the part of having the possibility on the Azure database, on the PaaS solution, or to just stop the service. It's main for dev test scenarios, just to save costs, because if you stop database, guess what happens? You don't pay.
Well, you lose all your connections, if I'm not mistaken.
You lose all connections, but you don't pay, right?
It's been a few years since I've been a DBA, but I feel like that's one of the foundational things that we should understand.
Really? If you stop a database, you will lose the connections.
There's a very good possibility of that happening. I'm going to say more than 50%.
I think it's close to 100.
It's very close to 100.
But the good thing about this is cost savings. one of our favorite topics
right.
over here at the podcast.
Yeah, so I'm very passionate about cost optimizations, and certainly looking at different infrastructure pieces that we can turn off for after hours, or at the very least when not in use. Then I think that if we turn off the database, nobody's going to have to make updates over Christmas break, which means everybody gets a Christmas break, except for the poor DBA that you forgot to tell about it, because your monitoring was in preview and it didn't work right, and they didn't know the database.
You forgot to update the monitoring, saying that now there is a new feature that you can start and stop the database. I got that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just had to string those ones together.
That's okay.
Because all of a sudden in my head, I just saw this terrible trail happening. You know what? We need to talk about that for a minute.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And talking about monitoring, the next update is the GA of our good friend Azure Log Analytics. It's on United Arab Emirates Central region and Japan West.
Exactly. Yep. And may I point out, well said. We've both been struggling with pronunciation again this week for some reason. There must be something in the water, or I'm not sure.
I think it's the weather.
Anyways, so yes, log analytics, as you know, it collects telemetry. See, here we go again. Telemetry from many sources, right? And brings it together, and it uses Data Explorer, Azure Data Explorer, I should say, to retrieve and analyze the data. And so now this has hit GA for UAE Central and Japan West. So, we both utilize log analytics quite a bit in our Azure deployments. We're big proponents of collecting the data, keeping the logs, centralizing things, because when you centralize it, you can start using other tools to find commonalities or anomalies in the data. And then we can actually get some value from it, right? So easy to collect data, and Azure makes it easy to store that data. So really cool.
But public preview on the Azure Log Analytics in Australia Central too. So we got GA for some regions and public preview for other regions. In this case, for Australia.
So they keep pushing these out. They're trying to get everything evolving. So some regions will hit at different times for sure, because you can't be everywhere and do everything all at once. But really cool, because now the one region in Australia is now for public preview. So it's moved from private preview at least into public, right?
In this case, so it was GA for UAE in this case, and Japan, and now becomes public preview on Australia Central 2 in this case, and that's a very good way to see that the monitoring tool is moving forward. Although it's not the only update. Now,
what?
Yeah.
There's another preview.
It's another preview. It's not with Azure Log Analytics, but it's with new Azure Monitor Agent available on the latest Linux distros and new regions. Look at this.
And more regions.
More regions.
Oh my goodness, it's a double whammy.
Yeah. So a lot of this monitoring that is always awesome to see it. And again, it goes, I think it was last week that we mentioned that we have Python 3.9 on Azure Functions, was it?
Gotcha.
Now, for the supporters, the latest distro via Python 3, we have CentOS Linux 8, Debian 10. I think it's one of your favorites, right? Oracle Linux.
The Debian ones.
Red Hat, SUSE, Enterprise Server 15.2 and 51, and Ubuntu 20. It's now, but it's not only the regions. It's a few regions, and unfortunately, it's not in Canada.
No, it isn't, and it's important to note. So there is one kind of detail I want to call out that ties into, how we talk about be careful with previews. So this one is in preview, and if you kind of zero in at the bottom of the OS section there's a little line that says there's a known issue with syslog events. Only supports performance counters, and then lists a few features. So this is kind of what we talk about, right? So we can't use preview things and expect them to be 100%. And this is a really good example of that. So I'm not going to dwell on it. I just wanted to draw attention to the fact I feel Microsoft is really open about these things because this is about getting products to market and into our hands to use as quick as possible with the best quality possible.
Yeah.
So disclosing that there's a missing chunk in the product, I feel, is helping to guarantee the best quality because they're being very upfront about it, right?
And there is, besides of that, there is a missing K on network as well.
It was. I want to say it.
I just want to reiterate that.
Until I asked you to highlight it in the middle of the page, and then I noticed there was a typo. I'm so sorry for whoever typed that.
That's okay. But if you are, and I apologize to you, specifically to you, that you are listening to the podcast, I highly recommend going either to the YouTube channel to see this, or to go to the page or to update page, because he's missing a K as well. So it's not only that, there is a known issue with the missing a K on the network. I don't know if that is important or not, but I just want to highlight.
Like it could be problematic. A network missing a K. I don't know. I'm gonna have to phone somebody about that one. So I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna say if Microsoft in-house actually listens to this and gets feedback about their missing K on network, please give us a reshare, retweet Azure Centric, and let everybody know we're here to help. We found the missing K.
Exactly. Or we found where the K is missing in this case.
Well, that's true. We found where the K is missing. Oh my gosh.
Oh my God. This is
still a little bad about that. That must be the Canadian in me.
That's okay. Let's move to the next one so we can forget about the missing K. So IT Service Management Connector, the ITSMC, is now certified with ServiceNow Paris version.
That's
How cool is that?
Yeah, so it's so if we take a look at the update, unless we use ServiceNow on a regular basis, which I don't, it is here and there. I understand the concepts and all those good things, but certainly I don't use it every day at a administrative level. That said, I don't think that there's a lot missing from here. So this is really cool, right? So the Azure services like Log Analytics and Azure Monitor provide tools to detect, analyze, and troubleshoot issues with different resources running within Azure. That can be Azure or non-Azure resources, right? So enabling a product like IT Service Management products, the ITSM, those connectors are really useful because they help bring data into ServiceNow, which allows ServiceNow, which is a very big automation tool really, to have better data, better information, and faster results, right? So it gets the information when it needs it. So ITSM integration is really big, really, really good stuff. I love that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Moving on to the next one. And this is the part that I like, and I think on the next two, it really shows in my opinion, the greatness of Azure, because Azure achieves its first PCI 3DS certification. So besides being one of the most certified Azure or certified cloud providers that we have already in the market, now we are adding this certification on the QSA, the Quality Security Assessors, that is Azure is partnered with qualifier. Now it's attestation, a shared responsibility matrix, and the white paper that shows everything is the first PCI 3DS certification.
Exactly. Yeah. So Azure, as well as you know, and hopefully as many of our viewers and listeners will know too, Microsoft Azure has been a leader for not only security, but for certification as well. And, that's really important because we talked about attestation earlier. We talked about kind of that foundation building out. And if I'm not mistaken, Azure stands alone with the highest level of United States Department of Defense certification for holding workloads. So
and it's
cool.
It's not only it's like NSA level. It's NSA level. It's DoD, so Department of Defense. In this case, U.S. Department of Defense. It's a lot of those things. It's government. It's a peripheral of certification that they have that allows them to just be using that. And I think one of the things that I want to reiterate, and it's a nice segue for the next update. It's now that Azure have 172 offerings that achieve the HITRUST certification. That's huge. So
it's very big. So that's across 49 Azure regions. Holy moly, right?
49 so out of the 60 plus. Big. So we're talking about a huge, big majority of the entire footprint of Azure.
That's right. So we talk about those US standards because that's a bit what we're familiar with here in North America. But really, I think the underlying story here is that Azure is working towards certifications in each region, and they're trying to use industry standards to make sure that governments and agencies, healthcare agencies, all of these things that we've been talking about lately on our podcast together, those vertical versions of Azure, that they're all certified and capable of holding that kind of confidential data, confidential computing, financial data, healthcare data. Azure really does have that big push to help all of these different kind of niche areas. And government is a niche area, right? We've both worked on some government contracts over the years, and they have a lot of not just security requirements, but they have a lot of compliance requirements. So having Azure workloads able to support all of that is really important to be able to not just attract it for business, but to be able to support and help those agencies move forwards with their technology.
And it's not only that. We've been mentioning over here all of those certifications and everything else, but we also mentioned that Azure, in this case, release the healthcare part of it, the Azure for healthcare, the Azure for retail, all of those kind of solutions for those verticals shows that Azure is prepared for dealing with all of that, especially on healthcare. And you know really well what does that mean. The IPA, it's one of the most difficult things to just do it.
It's so complicated.
The financial one, it's incredible, and we're starting to see a lot of those things going down because people are already starting to see the value of those certifications and the cloud provider. And
absolutely. And one thing I'm happy to report is even in small and medium space, which is where we have a lot of kind of our shorter term projects as consultants. I've seen a lot of Canadian companies in that size space working towards their PCI DSS standards. And it's not because they have to be compliant in Canada with it. That's a US requirement, but it's because they want the data to be secure.
Absolutely.
And they want their customers, they want to attract customers not just from their local area, but doing online business. So that means, especially in these days where everybody does everything remotely, that you have to hit a certain standard to be able to sell to that certain market
And
segment.
you became more secure,
So
right?
it's an interesting thing, right?
And that's a very good segue for the next topic over here. It's not an update, but talking about security and talking about that, it's a very nice blog post from Azure Blog talking about the year of 2020 in review about the Azure DDoS protection. So, and I was reading this and I was comment with you when we jump into this recording, this conversation, that first of all, as you going through the blog post, you see that in 2020, because of COVID, they drove a sharp increase of denial of services attacks. Okay,
I saw that in this data here. Yeah,
and there was a lot of and the reason because of that is, and if you're thinking, because of that, a lot of those companies, and we mentioned this at the beginning at this podcast, right? A lot of companies, when we talk about security, a lot of companies had to extend their offices, their footprint to home office. And we know that a lot of time, right, our home, we relax a little bit, right? Especially on people that are not IT related. Even sometimes we do it. We don't want. We have already problems at work. It's especially for us in our clients and everything else. But especially for us, and especially for IT persons that working from home, I think this is really keen to just showing that there are a lot. And if you're going on this blog, they even mention that the increase of attack duration is less than 10 minutes. It just blows my mind that 53% of all the attacks that they have is less than 10 minutes.
So that talks to their detection and response time, right? So this is really, really cool stuff. So I think I'm going to speak for you here, and I feel safe in saying this one. Marcos and I both recommend you go to this blog post and read the article and just explore this a little bit and think about, are you taking advantage of the similar and same tools that Microsoft uses? And we're talking about Microsoft Defender for Azure workloads. We're talking about Defender for Office 365 workloads. And we're talking about aggregating that data using all of the security tools. And I'm not going to continue plugging all the different ones because we'll be here all night. But it's kind of a big deal. So, do take it seriously and go in here, read this and explore, because this is a good opportunity to take this up through management at your own organization and make a proposal to extend tools if you don't have those in place
and
today.
It's not only that, because if you remember, and I starting to see a lot of this, there was a lot of complaints when all the COVID started and everyone sent home about the internet is slow because everything else. And over here they say that Azure, in this case, the team, they recorded with a single IP, so it means that one person, he was able to do it 1 terabyte per second of bandwidth, okay, with only one IP. At another instance, they mitigate another attack that was doing 1.6 terabytes against multiple customers. So basically saying that the denial of service is no longer more going on, oh, let me go to the server and, for example, explore DNS or stopping. No, it's because you need internet to go, right? And you are basically saturating the link, that link for that customer, so they are not able to connect. And that's the interesting part. That's why we are seeing so much, in this case, attacks, no, not attacks, but we are seeing so much companies moving away, for example, from having the VPNs on-prem and moving them to the cloud. And one of the reasons is this, because now you are not saturating that link.
And distributing connections, way better model than the old-fashioned way, I want to say, of doing it. Now, that said, you need to still implement the proper tools. And this is so fascinating to me, an interesting twist. So I was actually talking with a client this week about user education when it comes to security, things, phishing, MFA, all these things. So important to educate employees, peers, and friends. I don't want to draw a line there at all. Educate your neighbor. It's tools that they can take home from the workplace that we share with them, and they can take that home and protect their own personal, their personal computer as well, right? So they understand what a phishing attack is, what it looks like, components of it, what not to do, and what they can do to report something, right? So there's a lot of benefits to that. That said, I don't want to dwell on user education too long. I want to focus on the Microsoft tools. And I found, so you're looking at the same thing I am. So there's a lot of breakdown in this article about different things, right? So we talk also in here about cost protections. I know I talk a lot about cost optimization, but what is the cost of compromised bandwidth? Bandwidth can be very expensive on corporate connections. And even on a personal connection, if we're running over, then there can be what they call the data overage charges, right? So it's very good. Yeah, there's so much information in here, and they have linked to everything.
Yeah.
So
this one, for example, the increase of the UDP flood on the reflection of attacks, because IoT connected devices that they are not secure, they are vulnerable. They build these botnets to launch reflection attacks, and they build all of this UDP flood and all of that. It's tremendous. I highly recommend, if you that are listening, I highly recommend going to the Azure blog. There is a link on the description to this post, as usual. But go there and look at, because it's really, really keen to just doing that. And we can be here hours. I was reading and I was almost jumping on my chair like, whoa, how cool was this blog? So I have to say, kudos to, now I'm going to murder your name, and I apologize in advance, to Alitia Thor, that is the program manager of Azure Networking. Such a nice blog post talking about this. I cannot reinforce that, and I think I have my good friend Andrew. So if you are listening to this, just reshare it. Sorry to the shameless plug. And if you are listening and you like it, guess what? Subscribe to the channel. My favorite button of all times. I don't know why I think this sooner, but that's okay. Let's move on. Again, it's not an update. We are reaching the end of our podcast, but it's not update. It's another awesome blog post from another area of Azure, talking about the innovations for more secure US microelectronics supply chain. And supply chain is being so critical during this COVID.
It has, yeah. So you and I have talked about it lots, both offline and during the podcast, kind of off and on as well. And we've really seen what an interrupted physical supply chain looks like here in North America now. So we've relied very heavily here on overseas manufacturing and getting goods to us here in North America. And this is part of, A, staying secure, but B, just trying to round out everything and have balance, right? So I think at Microsoft scale, they have to think about different things that we don't always think about in smaller scale. They're looking at global data center management. So they need to have multiple countries where they're getting hardware from, different security standards in each country. They try to, promote worldwide global standards for security, hardware, software, networking.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about foundational layers here today with the attestation and all of these other components that we've kind of touched on throughout the podcast today.
Yeah.
But here we land back on the final item, and we're talking again about physical hardware security and sourcing, right? So we know single sourcing, really not a great practice when you have large scale. You need to have multiple source, and that's part of what this is about, right? There's multiple facets to this for sure. But Microsoft has built partnerships. They've announced multiple ones throughout the past year. It's hard for me to believe this has been happening for a year almost now. But sorry, I got sidetracked. So there's a lot of emphasis on artificial intelligence using Azure AI and scaling the different designed workloads to run efficiently, right? And using the EDA architectures customized, right? So it's there's a lot of different pieces here.
And in this particular blog post, it mentions one thing that we already mentioned here, that this is basically for the US government customers, right? To secure the compliance of the stringent supply chain requirements for defense and critical infrastructure. So this is the way that, in this case, the US microelectronics supply chain, so all of the silicon partners using, in this case, the DoD, the Department of Defense, to straighten that partnership, right, and supply chain using what's called the Rapid Assure Microelectronic Prototypes, RAMP, using the Advanced Commercial Capabilities Project. So basically means that they are straightening up all and accelerate all the silicon development cycle specific with all the security that they require for the DoD, for all of those devices and everything else. And now we can extrapolate and imagine that they will come with the new drones, like smaller, faster, and going around the moon and come back, whatever it is that they are developing, with all of that on a secure way, on a central way, and using a lot of that supply chain that sometimes they need it. So if they are able to develop this and they need that material on the supply chain, bang, artificial intelligence say, hey, if you use this, it's being conducted. And now I'm just imagining, just putting my head just spinning, using artificial intelligence and machine learning to accelerate all that process. So say, hey, look at, because DoD is developing this, your partner, you probably need more this component. So try to produce more that component. So when they hit the market, or when they hit, in this case, the deadline of going to the market, you'll be ready and you can fulfill all of that, right? So I imagine that it is that, but from what I was able to read, it's awesome that they are straightening up even that, or even on a very particular way like this. Okay, that's the part that I like about this blog post. It's not as exciting as the previous one about denial of services, but it's still a good blog post to read it and to do it.
It's an important one.
It is an important one, just to show in this case that the security is there, all the cloud is there as well, and they are using for this purpose. That is a really good idea how you can use it on a supply chain that we suffer so much. So sadly, we are at the last update. Appended blob support for Azure Data Lake Storage is now in limited public preview. And I love this. The limited public preview, the private previews, the ones that they are in development, is the ones that you're seeing that, oh my God, it's new. Sorry for my excitement.
It's new, and it is exciting, right? You don't have to apologize for that at all. So that's part of why we're here, right? Because we get excited about these new releases, about different evolving technologies in Azure. So this one's about Azure Data Lake Storage, and with the limited public preview, if I'm not mistaken, you have to go fill out a form or send an email usually, and you have to apply and ask to be part of it. And there is they have some criteria that they have in mind. They want different testing scenarios and things like that to happen. So, take a look. You can apply. You can go and be part of it.
Just one thing. Don't put on the form that you are applying for this because Marcos and Andrew told you about. Because it will not get you, for sure, the access to public preview.
It might be the opposite of that, yeah.
Yes. Although we will appreciate, because then they will check us out, and you know what's going to happen, right? They will probably see, and if Microsoft is seeing, just repost this, and we would like to see it.
It's the third shameless
plug. Oh my God!
Microsoft. We're on a roll.
We are, and you know what? My water is going low, and I need to switch to beer. So I think we need to finish this. But
indeed,
sorry to deviate you.
It's the end of a beautiful week, and we should celebrate. So there's been a lot of really good news this week.
Absolutely.
And I just want to say, first of all, to everybody kind of around, thank you. We really, really love hearing your feedback. And remember, there's one thing we should do. We should coordinate this. What should people do when they love the Azure Centric Podcast? They should subscribe and maybe give it a like, a thumbs up, and let us know what you're thinking. Leave a comment. Check out Azure Centric or Marcos or myself on Twitter. Let us know. We do our best to reply to everybody. We can't reach out to everybody all the time, but we do definitely put some time in for that. But thank you for having me, Marcos. I love our evening that we get to do this podcast. It is the highlight of the week.
Absolutely. And my friend, it's always a pleasure to have you over here to have a laugh, to talk about technology, to talk about Azure, and to talk about all of those opportunities that we have to share our knowledge. So once again, thank you for listening and seeing the podcast. Without your support, we will be just the two of us talking, and the idea is to share our knowledge as well. And I hope I can see you next week. So thank you so much, and see ya.